I'm gonna give 4 tips on what I do to fishing in the wind on a paddleboard. Number 1 is obviously get out of the wind. Even though I'm saying what to do while fishing in it, you want to avoid it and get out of it. So what I do is find lakes that have the highest tree structure and the longest shoreline that I can find. That way, when that wind's whipping, it's got to fight through those trees versus some of the places I fish where, you know, you'll have houses that have cleared a lot of trees, and then, you know, it creates kind of wind tunnels. Number 2 is, since I bass fish all the time for my paddleboard, is I wouldn't even say mainly, I always fish lily pads, and I use those lily pads as a giant anchor. So I will paddle into those lily pads, sacrifice spooking a handful of fish to get in there, and then I will just fan cast all over the place and just keep moving my way down, keep casting, and then I can stay in there when it's probably 15 to maybe 20 before those lily pads don't hold. And it really depends on how concentrated lily pads are, how thick they are, how strong they are, versus some of them, sometimes when you get in them, they're kind of dying, or they're just, you know, they're not really that strong. So that's also will dictate how well your paddleboard will hold because of your fin. Number 3 is paddle into the wind. So if the wind's coming out of the north, and this all depends on really how windy it is, I wouldn't, to be honest with you, to be on a paddleboard, I wouldn't go out over 10 if you're going to try this, just because you're going to be paddling pretty hard. But paddle into the wind, north, as long as you can and as far as you can, and then just drift all the way back to where you just came from. And I do that sometimes. It really just depends on, you know, how far I feel like paddling and if I feel like getting exercise. Number 4, get low. So obviously right now I'm sitting, but what you want to do is, if you can, fish off your knees. That'll give you less wind resistance, because when you're standing, you are creating a natural sail that will just blow you all over the place. So you can also sit down as I'm doing, and that will make a huge difference. You can't really sight fish as much, but a substantial difference on how much wind you're actually catching versus being at the highest point to a midpoint to a low point. And I've even had instances where the wind was blowing so hard that sometimes I had to sit down and paddle. I mean, it's happened, not very often, because I'm smart enough to, you know, put myself in a position where I don't have to work that hard. And obviously another thing you want to do is, I guess would be tip number 5, even though I'm saying 4, is check the weather before you go out. I know that sounds stupid, but the last thing you want to do is go to a place that has really, really good fishing, or certain spots of it are really good, and the wind's coming out of a direction that you can't really fish that spot because of what the wind's doing. So just take a couple minutes, check the wind before you go out, and that'll pretty much, for me, dictates where I'm going to fish and probably how long I'm going to fish. But yeah, those are just some of the things I look for when I'm, you know, when I go out paddleboarding, and I don't let the wind discourage me from fishing, because, you know, it's just part of Mother Nature, and you can use it to your advantage. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it you know, makes your fishing a little bit harder. Dude, this is the biggest bass I've ever caught. This thing's freaking gigantic. Look at the belly on this guy. Holy cow. I mean, look at her. Oh my God. Oh. Holy cow. That was insane. I'm about to go into these trees, aren't I? Fudge. Ugh, man, I was trying to avoid this, but man, it's a good tutorial about being in the wind, right? Golly. What the hell? I was way over there too. Live and learn, right? What was I saying? Get out of the wind.